Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is David Goodman. I'm the director of the China Studies Center. And before we start, and I introduce briefly the two speakers today, I wish to acknowledge the original owners of the land on which the University of Sydney is based, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay respect to their elders and their traditions, past, present, and emerging. Today, we're going to hear from Beibei Tang, who's Professor of China Studies at Suzhou Liverpool University in Suzhou. And she will be introduced by Professor Luigi Tomba, who's also here from the University of Sydney. I'm now going to hand over to Luigi to introduce Beibei. Over to you both.
Thank you. That's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, David. And my name is Luigi Tomba, and I'm the former director of the China Studies Center. Welcome to everyone who's come to this online presentation. This is a very personal and real thing for me because I'm introducing Professor Beibei Tang from the Department of China Studies at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences of Xi'an Liverpool University in Suzhou, China. I'm very connected to her work, and it's the greatest pleasure to be asked to introduce her today. Let's start with a brief history of her education. She started in China at Wuhan University. She was then in the University of Oxford for her MPhil in sociology. And I met her when she came to the Australian National University, where she did a PhD, also in sociology. She stayed at the university as a postdoctoral fellow at the Center for Deliberative Democracy and Global Governance before going to Suzhou to be a lecturer and moving all the way up until getting the rank of professor this year. So I think congratulations have to come from here too, from this venue. She has also been the head of the Department of China Studies until 2020. To then become the Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. She has a very busy life as an academic, but today she can still provide us with her new research. With Beibei, we have collaborated in many different ways and always with great results. And she has published very important work on the middle class and housing situation, both with me and much more on her own. I can't mention all of her publications, but surely I have to cite the article in the China Quarterly called Not Rural But Not Urban, Community Governance in Urbanized Villages, from 2015 that won her the Gordon White Prize. She also published the book China's Housing Middle Class, Changing Urban Life in Gated Communities with Routledge in 2018. And then the brand new book that she's going to publish next year for Cornell University Press that is entitled Governing Neighborhoods in Urban China, Changing State-Society Relations. That will be appearing next year, and we'll all look forward to it. There would be so much more that could be said about Beibei, but I want to let her the time to surprise us with her new finding. The title of her paper is The Making of New Citizens, Landless Farmers and Urban Governance in China. A note to all participants, please use the Q&A on your screen to write the questions that I will have to ask her, and I will read them after the presentation. Now, please, Beibei.
Yes, thank you, Luigi, for your very kind introduction. And it's a great pleasure for me to present this research here. And I would also like to thank David and the center to give me this opportunity to share. This is the research that I have been doing in the past few years in Suzhou, where I work, and which mainly examines that one particular group of urban residents produced by China's urbanization in the past 2 decades, the so-called landless farmers. Urbanization of the Chinese countryside has been carried out as a national campaign, mainly through the expropriation of rural land for urban development projects. This process not only has resulted in a fundamental transformation of the life of many farmers, but also has profound impacts on the organizations and operations of the Chinese urban society. As a direct result of this process, a new group of residents were introduced to Chinese urban society, the so-called landless farmers. The common practice was the villagers collecting farmland was expropriated for urban residential or commercial projects, and the villagers were granted urban household registration. And in turn, they were switched to be under the urban administration and the governance system. In some cases, mainly in the Pearl River Delta region, and we see that the villagers managed to keep their original house sites and continue to live in their natal village. And this group and those villages became the so-called urban villages. And in other cases, the land expropriation applied to both the farmland as well as the villagers' house sites. And the villagers were relocated to designated urban neighborhoods, the new urban residential compounds, and the so-called relocation communities. By 2010, it was estimated that urbanization had produced at least 52 million landless villagers. And the Blue Book of Cities in China argues that by 2012, the landless villagers already made up nearly 30% of China's urban population. And by 2014, this number was estimated to reach over 112 million. Together with migrant workers, the landless farmers constitute a key new urban class consisting of what the Chinese State Council calls transforming agriculture population, 农业转移人口. And from the state perspective, the integration of this group into urban life is of particular significance for economic development, as well as social stability of Chinese cities. Economically, this group are seen as a consumer force with great potential for domestic consumption. They are also becoming key participants of social and political life in Chinese cities. In 2016, the Chinese State Council policy called for transformation of this group from farmers to the so-called new citizens, 新市民. The new citizens I examine in this research mainly refer to the landless farmers, although in the State Council policy, those include both landless farmers and rural to urban migrant workers. To date, the accommodation and integration of landless farmers into Chinese urban life such as the new citizen schemes, has been largely interpreted as a top-down process led by central government initiatives, despite the local state has presented a certain degree of autonomy and flexibility in policy implementation, largely in relation to land politics and grassroots governance. But there is not enough that has been said about how the central government's initiatives on the landless farmers' integration into urban economy and society has been carried out, nor how the local state responds to the emergence to the landless farmers in the cities. This study is based on a research on the landless farmers in the neighborhood in Suzhou. It explores how this integration is carried out through local governance in economic activities, residential arrangements, welfare coverage, and the neighborhood life. This process, I would like to argue, that contributes to the local state building by addressing central local relations, local fiscal and population management strategies, and the regional competition and diversity. In this case, the local state building in this context is considered as a governance process which various actors, such as state actors, market actors, and society actors connect and interact with each other at different levels of the local governance. In this process, at the neighborhood governance level, the state infiltrates everyday living space of the citizens. And at urban governance level, in this case, the street office and district level, the local state strives to develop and implement its own strategies in securing its local interest while responding to the national government urbanization initiatives. Through the examination of this local state building process, this study aims to bring better understanding of the role of the state on the ground. Through studying Chinese urbanization, simultaneously address urban governance across different levels, such as neighborhoods, cities, and regions. It addresses both geographical particularities and the general political economic process of urban development in China. This study goes beyond the dichotomous interpretations of Chinese urbanization, either as a government-driven agglomeration or a state-led urbanization. Instead, it interrogates the governance of everyday living in neighborhoods and urban development strategies together with the city region planning. The information I use for this talk was collected from my field work in one district of Suzhou, the Suzhou Industry Park, where I have been working and living in the past for 7 years. I selected the largest relocation neighborhood, the T neighborhood in this in SIP, which accommodated the landless farmers who were relocated from their natal villages during the local urbanization. I conducted qualitative research to examine the governance mechanisms of local urbanization trajectory, management of landless farmers, and the implementation of the central government initiative of integrating landless farmers into the urban society. Suzhou Industry Park has been developing an identity of high-tech, developed areas, and a high education town to attract the young, well-educated middle-class population from different parts of China. It was officially established in 1994, and the T neighborhood area started their land expropriation and relocation since then. And with its 21 villages, which were all relocated to 7 relocation communities by the year 2011. By the year 2022, according to the official source, SIP's urbanization rate reached 100%. It has a smaller proportion of indigenous villagers in their population. Their population is largely well-educated young middle class whose career has taken off in SIP. The neighborhood in SIP are expensive, surrounded by elite schools. For SIP, the transformation or their urbanization process was more of becoming a urban middle class area rather than simply become an urban area. This is the photo. I give you a rough idea. If you see the north side with the tall building and the high-rise building, that's the CBD's area and the middle-class residential neighborhood. And towards the south is the university town. And in between those low-rise buildings are the T neighborhoods, where the 21 villagers were relocated to. So this gives you a rough idea where this T neighborhood is located. In this area, there are 7 residential compound community or 小区, if you would like to call it, in this relocation area. They are all the designated compensation housing for the landless farmers in this in the T neighborhood area. For a 3-generation family in the village, normally they could get 2 to 3 apartments, and according to the size of their original household. And some also got a basement in the building in addition to their apartment. And the villagers can rent it out or sell it if they don't want to live there. Here, I give you a brief summary of how the urbanization was carried out. This was a very complicated process. I summarized the compensation package for land expropriation and the compensation package for demolition and relocation. For land expropriation, mainly the compensation included 4 components: the compensation for land value, relocation, damages to the properties on that land, and for the agricultural products on those expropriated land. And for compensation for demolition and the relocation mainly included 2 components. One is the monetary compensation, and the other is the compensation housing, as you see those the current T neighborhood housing. What distinguishes the landless farmers from other urban neighborhoods is their connection to rural collective economy in terms of their remaining village collective assets after the land expropriation and the relocation. Since 2001, under the leadership of SIP government, a so-called community shareholding cooperation was established to manage the remaining village collective assets on behalf of the villagers who became the shareholders of the shareholding cooperation. There are 2 major companies established under this scheme. One is the DJ Assets Management Company, and the other is the Lotus Housekeeping Company. Both companies have heavy involvements of the local government as well as the companies that were associated with the local government. The DJ Assets Management Company mainly manages 3 types of the rural collective assets: collective fund, collective properties, mainly in terms of buildings, and collective resources in terms of land. Over the years, the company had successfully developed its business operation, and different from the previous Guangdong model, where manufacturer industry was the norm, and the DZ company actually target high-tech industries in line with the SIP government's development strategies. As you can see here, the R&D activities of the biomedical companies is one key targeted industry, not just for the DJ Assets Management Company, but this is also that key area that the SIP government has heavily invested in to develop in the entire SIP area. And the other one company is the so-called Lotus Housing Company, and different from the DJ Assets Management Company, mainly focusing on the village collective assets, and the Lotus Housekeeping Company mainly focused on the landless farmers from those villages. And this company was established to provide job opportunities to the landless farmers in their neighborhood. This company developed two key schemes. One is to provide skill training for landless farmers in the areas of cleaning, cooking, baby nursing, electrician, and baking. In addition, the company also set up an online housekeeping service platform with the support of the local family service companies. The users of this platform can book housekeeping service they want through their online app. And this platform currently provides bookings for babysitting, housekeeping, and house repair. And the middle-class residents in the nearby neighborhoods are the main customers. Along with the establishment of this community shareholding cooperation scheme, the local government also introduced the 社区 administration and governance structure to the tea neighborhood. Its leadership team includes officials seconded from ICIP government, former village committee members, and the key members of the previous village collectives. Like the other urban neighborhoods, the 社区 the tea neighborhood 社区 has a residence committee under the leadership and the supervision of the ICIP Administration Center, which is actually the official name of the ICIP local government. And the tea 社区 works as an agent of the state in governing every single aspect of the residence community life, including the trainings for the work opportunities for the landless farmers, as well as the management of the remaining collective assets. The tea 社区 and its party branch work closely with the two companies mentioned above as a liaison between the local government, the two companies, and the residents. Through this urbanization and the relocation process, ICIP local government has managed to establish a strong leadership in its governance of the tea neighborhood before and after relocation. Its compensation package somehow helped a smooth and stable transition during the relocation process with both cash and housing compensation. And more importantly, its scheme for helping the landless farmers to get an urban employment after the land expropriation further accelerated the negotiation process between the government and the villagers in relation to relocation. And this is quite substantially different from what we observed in the Guangdong area before. And where villagers were mainly given the opportunity to build their house and rent out on their house sites instead of getting the opportunity for new urban employment. During this process, the ICIP local government also managed to secure its involvement and even also leadership in the village shareholding cooperation scheme. As a result, the two shareholding companies, they developed their own development strategy, which were highly in line with the local government development strategy. And the villagers, as the shareholders, then have little decision-making power in relation to how the remaining village collective assets shall be managed and developed. This is also quite different from the observation from Guangdong as well. But in this case, for most of the villagers, as long as they continue to receive annual bonuses, they don't have actually much strong feelings about who actually leads the company's development. And for the local government, this cooperation scheme has become an effective and efficient strategy to gather, mobilize, and coordinate the economic resources of the village collectives to facilitate not only the economic transformation of those villages, but also to boost the local economic development of the SIP region. And then let's take a look at the farmers' everyday life. For the landless farmers in tea neighborhood, they were introduced to urban life through multiple aspects. The villagers in tea neighborhood were provided various pension and medical insurance schemes according to the age groups they belong to. And this is, again, a very complicated process. The pension and medical insurance scheme actually varies according to which group you belong to. They have the age group from 16 to 35, and 35 to 45, and then 45 and above, and then the age group over 60. So different groups, there are different calculation about how the pension or the medical insurance is carried out. And in addition to the social security coverage, and the tea neighborhood villagers, they also managed to secure jobs in the city through different channels. The younger generation, who are also better educated compared to their parents, they are more like the younger generation elsewhere. They take up jobs in the city, mainly in the tertiary sector. And for the middle-aged group, especially those who are in their 40s and early 50s, men usually, they found a job in local industries, and the women are more likely to work as house cleaning and property management in the local middle-class neighborhoods. For the residents who are over the age of 50, the DJ property management company is the biggest, and sometimes this is the sole employer for this group of population. The company assigned those villagers as their employees to different areas in SIP and different neighborhoods to carry out the gardening work. And the scale of this greening and gardening work that covers the entire SIP. And the all middle-class neighborhoods in surrounding areas. And for example, in the neighborhood where I live, 50% of our property management company employees are the residents from the tea neighborhood. And for the elderly residents in this neighborhood, if their health conditions do not allow them to do the gardening work, they run small business inside the neighborhood, such as shoe repairing and tailoring. And in this neighborhood, the education and business facilities were also developed as a part of the area's development plan. So the SIP's strategy was to develop a relocation neighborhood that's on one side, but on the other side, they want to make this neighborhood as a part of the overall SIP development plan rather than a standing out neighborhood in the area. So far, 1 kindergarten, 2 schools, and 2 hospitals, and 1 neighborhood center have gradually been established in the surrounding the neighborhood area. And the local development plan placed this neighborhood to be surrounded by newly developed middle-class housing projects. To a certain extent, that has shaped the consumption and the lifestyle of the tea neighborhood residents who would like to follow the urban middle-class residents living nearby. For example, when it comes to consumption and lifestyle, the younger generation, they are more likely to follow the middle-class lifestyle through consumption, such as buying expensive vehicles and the luxury designer brands. And for middle-aged generations, with their more stable income sources, they are more likely to save the money and to purchase a new apartment, which is considered as a necessity for their children who are in the marriage market. Most of them purchase the new apartments in newly developed gated communities in the outskirts of SIP, because the housing price in those areas were about a half or 2/3 of the price in SIP. And the great majority of the home buyers in that area, they were landless farmers or migrant workers who want to stay in Suzhou for a long time. And they use the rental income from their current apartment or the compensation housing in the T neighborhood to pay for the mortgage for their new apartment. By moving out of the T neighborhood and purchasing a new apartment in newly developed gated communities, they imitated the lifestyle of urban middle class in SIP. Creation activities in urban neighborhoods contributes significantly to urban neighborhood life. The Shequ Center in T neighborhood provides space and organizes activities for the elderly and the other groups of residents for their leisure activities, such as community library, dance groups, and cultural activities. In the meantime, the T neighborhood residents managed to keep its rural traditions, since most residents are from the original villages. So they continue to organize banquets for birthday parties, weddings, and funerals in their traditional way. They borrow or rent communal space in the neighborhood as a temporary location for the banquet, and they invited the villagers to come. Usually it's an outdoor area with tents. And the villagers prepare the cooking materials, and the women are normally helping in the kitchen, and the banquet can last for a few days. Although not all villagers like to continue this kind of tradition, because some of the younger generation these days, they actually prefer to go to restaurants or to book a ballroom in a local hotel for those kind of banquets. But it's still considered, this kind of traditional way, the traditional banquet is still considered as an obligation and a norm to organize such parties. And even during the very strict pandemic control in the past 2 years, those kind of practices still continued formally or informally, with or without permissions. Yeah. So to sum up, through the urbanization process or the making of the T neighborhoods, relocation neighborhoods, this case, I would argue that the making of the new citizens goes hand in hand with the local state building in this case. And the local state building in this process is carried out through the local state-led relocation projects, incorporation of village collectives into local development plans, and change of governance structure and strategy, where neighborhood governance play a significant role in consolidating decision-making power and facilitating the reach of the local state at the grassroots level. Through this process, the local state has enhanced its economic, social, and political power infrastructures. Economically, the local state pooled and consolidated village collective assets as a part of the state-led urbanization and development through establishing the leadership in the management of the village collective assets. Socially, the local state used urban middle-class residents as an inspiration or the role model to introduce urban middle-class lifestyle. And politically, through introducing urban neighborhood governance, which co-opted previous village government elites and the village collective key members, the local state secured its leadership of and reach to the new citizens on the ground. So I think I'm gonna stop here, and I would like to welcome your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Bebe. That was very, very perfect in the use of time. And I would like to ask you one question while everyone gets his. I don't see it yet. So I would like to ask you something that is generally very has been very useful to me when I look at these people. I look at their desire to be something, and their possibility to be something, and then something that goes wrong, and so they become they do not manage to be something in a way. So I'm just wondering whether there's any of this group has become different, or has become more desire to I don't know, to be to be against the state, so to say. And I don't want to be too much of that, but I mean, is there a part of what they do that makes you think that they could be against the state?
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is a good question. It really depends on the age group, which in turn associate to what kind of the package you have received and what's your current living status quo. I think there's one particular group probably that they probably feel that they are missing out, is those group that they didn't manage to have their own business, but at the same time, they didn't manage to have an urban employment after this. So even because if you don't have urban employment after this, even if you are covered by the urban pension and the medical insurance, it still depends on your individual 100% contribution. So it's still their money. And so those people probably, and then when they see not just the urban middle class living next door, but also the other villagers who are living, this is 7 xiaoqu there, those who are doing better than them, and they start feeling they're missing out. And then that's where the discontent come from. And that's where you do see the questions of who should be making the decision about the management of the village collective assets. That comes out. And so I guess this is really depends on the age group, and then their current the living conditions, and yeah.